how is Ford using social media? Let me just say this, that Ford has adopted social media, and Ford obviously is a big brand, and there are many big brands using social media marketing. Again, I want to reinforce with you that our primary objective is to simply get involved in the conversation, earn trust, reinforce your reputation, and influence your audience. And we'll learn how Ford does that through a couple of their programs. We're going to learn first about a success story from Ford, and then we're going to discover a second effort that Ford has entered into. We're going to go through 7 questions that have been asked of Scott Monty, who is the head of social media for Ford Motor Company. And basically you'll learn through his answers how he underscores these objectives, outlines the success that a big brand is experiencing. Let's start with the Fiesta product. Anyone familiar with the Ford Fiesta product? You'll be interested in how this happened. The question that was asked was, some statistics are reporting Ford Fiesta has a 37% awareness among the Generation Y, even though it hasn't, Ford hasn't spent any money promoting or hasn't paid any media. And the question is, how are you getting that kind of awareness? Scott's answer to that is, the current number is 38% awareness of a vehicle that's not even in the market, which is equivalent to the awareness level of vehicles that have been in the market for 2 to 3 years. The 100 agents out there have produced over 700 videos total. Now let me define for you. Agents are the 100 people called Agents of the Fiesta Movement, whom Ford chose to drive a Fiesta and then to communicate about their experience and to create online videos. Currently, they have 4.8 million views on their YouTube videos, 600,000 views on their Flickr photos, and 3.2 million impressions on Twitter. Pretty incredible for not having spent any media dollars. So the question is, how did you get the word out? Did you give these cars away? They were lent to people for 6 months, and we did a grassroots effort where we used the connections that we had, connections that our advertising agency had, basically to get the word out. We had 4,000 applicants for those 100 spots, narrowed it down using a number of different factors, looked at the ability for these people to create a monthly online video, because that would be a requirement for every one of the agents. We also looked at their social vibrancy, how connected they were across all the networks, as well as how many connections they had within those networks. We also looked at the geography of each person. In reality, this is not just an online campaign. These people are actually out there driving these cars on the street. We needed to think about where they actually were in the country. So the question is, how is Ford measuring its social media? Are they asking, are we getting a proper bang for our buck based on the amount of money we're paying Scott and his staff and the time and the attention of the employees worldwide? Are we getting more out of it than we're putting into it? Obviously, you folks as business owners or business managers are asking yourselves the same thing. Scott answers, I was the only social media staffer here for a year. Think about that. He's the only guy that's running social media for Ford. Obviously, he's got agencies that are supporting him, but he's the guy who's controlling the whole thing. But ultimately, 90% of social media is just showing up, to borrow a phrase from Woody Allen. A lot of the credit we're getting for social media is just because Ford is showing up. We're present. Our social media activities are really geared more around awareness and changing the perception at the broad end of the sales funnel rather than at the narrow end. It's not that we put out a tweet and we sell a car, although we have had instances of it. The question is, so somebody actually bought a car because of Twitter? Scott says, yes. In one Twitter conversation, one person says, I only bought a Ford because of Twitter. And then he goes on to say, I bought the Ford because of my interest was piqued because of Twitter, and the relationship was created. and they make a great Ford Escape. And then he responds to someone saying, they built a relationship with me, and I trust Ford. Okay, so we've accomplished one of our objectives. Ultimately, Scott says, we want to break through the barrier of trust. If you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, it shows that 77% of people trust corporations less in 2009 than in 2008. Okay, we're talking about trust of corporations here. Whom do you trust? They trust third-party experts such as Consumers Report, New York Times, and they trust people that are just like themselves. This whole notion of humanizing Ford is to show consumers that there are people just like them at Ford who are intelligent, talented, passionate about the company, and for a very good reason. All right, what did we learn in that story? The Ford Fiesta story. We learned that videos deliver powerful messages. We learned that we need to look for influential audiences. Just showing up, getting involved in the conversation is 90%. We learned that people do make buying decisions from social media, and we learned that social networkers trust people, not institutions. Okay, let's go review now a brand new campaign. This is a campaign that took place just in the last few months. In fact, it's in the midst. This is for the Ford Focus. And the quote here is, the most important launch in our company's history, which is a quote from Jim Farley. He's the VP of Global Marketing at Ford. What Ford is doing is yet another trump card to outdo the last awesome thing that they did. With the Fiesta movement and the launch of Explorer, Ford created a new way of communicating with these customers, and they showed the entire world how to do social media. Now, nothing is ever perfect, but they were both successes. Here are some of the elements that Ford is doing with the Ford Focus launch. Number one, 50 applicants will be chosen and flown with a guest to an undisclosed location in Southern Europe. They're going to test drive the Ford Focus before anyone else sees it. Ford will enable them to record and share their experiences driving the new Ford Focus and encourage them to communicate online about their trip and their test drive. Very similar to what they did with Escape. For their time and trouble, the 50 winning applicants will each be given $10,000 to donate to a charity of their choice. The 50 will be chosen on a number of criteria, but you can assume that the size of one's sphere of influence will be a big factor. More importantly, however, applicants will be chosen because of their desire to be involved with Ford. This campaign is brilliant. The charitable element makes people feel good. Some people will apply to be involved in this that never would have otherwise, only because the $10,000 payoff means something special to them personally. And as well, Ford looks like a champion because they're allowing the participant to pick the charity. The entire campaign is completely an opt-in thing. If you're interested, anybody can apply, and that ultimately makes the output or the material that they're putting out there through their networks more genuine and passionate. Another A-plus move for the company that clearly understands social media. They're thinking about their consumers over their products. Here's Farley again. We couldn't think of launching a vehicle today without launching it early using social media. We are diverting more and more resources towards social media, which requires us to work very differently. We're absolutely accelerating our investment in social media because that is where the people are spending their time. We watch the positive and the negative comments, but also the volume of comments, he explained. People are talking about Ford in the United States unlike any time. Clearly, Ford is embracing social media marketing in ways that other companies are not. They are starting to not only see consumer-centric thinking, but see the benefits of it. So what did we learn in the Ford Focus experience? we're looking for interested as well as influential audience. Getting involved with a charity makes the audience feel good, and as well helps you get more people involved. When you give the audience control, they will opt in and they will participate. You need to think about the consumer over the product. It's time to accelerate your investment in social media. And the conversation is what's important. Let me close the whole Ford story by saying this. In order to accomplish a campaign like either of these, you need a few essentials. You need a strategy to develop and build a social media marketing system. You need a loyal audience. You need credibility in the social landscape. Building these things is not it's not a kickstart effort. It is important that you study, you design, you develop, you launch, you commit, you begin to listen, converse, grow, and measure. Those are the items that are the formula to a solid social media marketing foundation. These Ford examples are samples of what you can accomplish with a foundation like that.